Thank you very much, Keki Mehta. I think Keki asked me to talk on the problems which I can get in femtocataract. And I think people like Abhay Vasavda or Keki Mehta, Mohan Rajan, and here I see in front of me Mahipal is there, I don't know if Ram is there, Chitra is there, but these people are using a high volume amount of femtocataracts. To be honest, I am not in that league. I'll be very honest to you. So when they asked me to talk on this, I thought I will just have to show on some problems which we can see, which we can get, and Keki wanted me to talk on the complications. This is the Lensar machine, and all these machines, we have the Victus also with us. Whether you have the Catalyst or the Lensex Catalyst, any of them, all of them work the same things. And there are certain problems which you can face. You can see here the incision is being made, and this is being done by one of my doctors, Ashwin. And once the rhexis is done, the incision is done, and the fragmentation is done, and then we shift it to the patient, then you see certain problems come to feel. You see here, there is a shutter fault coming in. So now at this stage, you can't tell the patient too much because there has been some failure in the machine, obviously. So we have to take up the patient for surgery, and we try to see what happens then. You can see now, obviously, we put up the rhexis trying to see what's happening inside, whether there was a rhexis cut or not. Obviously, the clear corneal incision you can see was not cut. The rhexis is cut, as you can see, but watch it carefully, it's not cut fully. So now when you have a patient, when you have done a femto and you have not been able to cut fully, you have to be very careful, try to complete the rest of the portion with your needle or any manual technique of your choice. And that's what is being done here. So you can see in the femto, you have certain issues which can happen like this. Rhexis has been completed. Once the rhexis got completed, then the rest of the procedure becomes easy. But notice in this case, once again, fragmentation has not occurred. If you saw Keki's videos, a nice fragmentation had occurred very nicely in the surgery. In this particular case, it did not happen. So once again, we just go in with a phacoemulsification, and since it's a mature cataract, it's not a hard mature cataract. So these cases, we always use our air pump, and once you have that on, we always chop it off any method which you want and emulsify it. But the idea of showing you this particular case is to show you basically this phenomenon of how to do the completing it manually, even if by chance your femto has failed. So you can see there the cortical aspiration being completed. Then once the cortex has been done, then you can always put a lens in choice. Now one big problem which you'll have in femto is if you have a small pupil. So if you have a small pupil, you cannot do femto. And I was discussing with Abhay on this topic also. You can put some ring, but the problem is the docking is going to be a headache. So either you tell the patient clearly, look, it's not going to happen, or alternatively, you'll be much better off just shifting to some other technique rather than telling him something or the other. Another thing which I wanted to show you just now was, Keki asked me also to talk on another problem which we can face in femto, and that is by and large, suppose you're doing femto, the air can get blocked because you see there is some gas emulsification going on there, and if there is a blockage there, when you go in for doing your hydrodissection, you've done nothing, and what you'll find that the posterior capsule has broken. So next topic which I thought I'll cover is on this topic, on how to manage these cases. Suppose by chance you have got a drop forming because of your femto. Remember one thing, when you do femto, the advice I will tell people is when you're removing the air, first remove it carefully. Now look at this case, nothing has happened, but the lens is already sinking without anything happening. So in such cases, just go ahead, and you can see what I'm doing now is, I've just removed that nucleus, brought it up anteriorly, And now we will try to do the scaffold technique to emulsify this nucleus before the fragment goes down fully. So this is one complication, and the first one was presented by Michael Lawless in the JCRS, and in ophthalmology he has published articles of dropped nucleus after femtocataract. You can also do a technique like I talked many times on, where you first do the glued IOL so that you can remove then the fragments much easily. But in this particular case, which I'm going to show you here, is I tried to do a scaffold because I brought the nucleus up anteriorly. Once I put it in, I have it as a support and I could emulsify the fragments. You watch carefully, I also installed an AC maintainer. Today we have a Procar AC maintainer, but at that time we were using AC maintainers to have fluid in the eye. Now when the pupil was still small in this particular case, I decided to go ahead with iris hooks. And you can see behind a small fragment still lying there. So what I thought was, I'll just bring it out, put it above the IOL, and now emulsify this fragment, and again using it as a scaffold, finished it. Now the rest of the surgery I thought is going to be very easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this IOL and I'll just implant it above the rhexis margin. So imagine I caught that IOL and I was just going to put it above the rhexis margin, and to my dismay the forceps got jammed. So you can see how I was going from one end of the frying pan to the fire. At this stage nothing else to do but start praying, because that forceps is totally jammed. When it got jammed, I then decided to try to release it, and to my luck it released suddenly. When it released suddenly, one of the basic mistakes you should do is never use the same forceps again. I used the same forceps again. So you can see from a femtocataract, I've gone into a drop nucleus, gone into a scaffold. Now I'm getting stuck with a forceps which is totally jammed, and second time jamming. Now I'm trying to release it and it broke. Now you see, I decided I'll take a new forceps and look at that old forceps. I'm trying to release that haptic outside. I can't even separate it outside the eye, and like a fool I was trying this maneuver inside the eye. So I go in with a new forceps and I'm trying to catch that haptic, bring it out. Once I did that, I thought now I'll cut the optic. Maipal taught me how to cut optic. Maipal is coming out with such expansion plans. He told me, Amar, you do one thing. You start cutting this optic also. So I cut it, but to my dismay, my scissor didn't cut. It works like a forceps. My forceps works like a scissor. Now I'm not releasing that optic. I'm trying to hold it on, and I pull it out. Now look at the femtocataract went to bad cornea also now. Now at the end I decided, in this whole bargain my rhexis also is gone. So now I decided to go in with a glued IOL, but look at this, there is a marker on one end I have put, but I have not put a marker on the other end. Okay? So I make my flaps and I say, okay, I'll make it easy and do the glued IOL technique. So you can see I made my sclerotomy. Once I made my sclerotomy, I go inside, create the chariot's pocket. I take my IOL and I say, okay, this poor patient, let's finish him at least as best as I can. And I go in and implant this intraocular lens. So very simple way for all of us to understand is, obviously I'm going to inject this lens, catch the haptic, pull it out, and then do the handshake technique so that my trailing haptic also comes out. So it looks very easy now. So when I went on the table to do it, as I told you, this is the handshake technique which I'm showing it on an animation, how that's done. So what I did was, I took my IOL and I started implanting my IOL inside the eye. Remember, there is one mark on one end of the cornea. On the other end, if you see, there is no mark. So I catch that haptic, I inject it inside. Once the IOL is gone in, I externalized it. So far so good. I thought now I'll do my handshake technique, and I have externalized my second haptic. But now look what's happening. My lens is decentered. So I didn't understand why it's decentered. And so I take out my iris hooks thinking the lens will become centered because of that. Obviously it will not. Then I began to realize I did not have a mark on the other end. So the flaps are not 180 degrees apart. Now I'm stuck. So what I decided now is to make a fresh sclerotomy matching the sclerotomy on the other side. Then I have to re-internalize the haptic. Once that's re-internalized, I will re-externalize the haptic, catch it, and now you can see the lens centered. At end of all this femtocataract which we started off with, you can see now the case getting some semblance of decency. So you can see now, I've just tried to tuck the haptics. I have a well-centered IOL. All I have to do is now suture up the clear cornea incision, apply the fibrin glue, and seal everything down. And this is how the case looks when it's completed. And that's the post-operative day 1. Thank you very much. My idea was to talk more on the problems of femto rather than the femtocataract, which I think these people are better off than me, frankly. Thank you very much.